You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. This podcast is meant to empower women and bring the community together through storytelling and education. During these episodes, you will hear stories of triumph, heartache, and hope. You will hear time-tested tips and tricks shared by mamas and women. You will hear a variety of birth stories that will resonate with all birthing families, advice from professionals who have dedicated their teachings to pregnancy, birth, and moms. Here, you will find encouragement, support, and community, because we are your community, and we are so happy to have you. Now, on to today's episode. Hello to our Mom to Mom podcast listeners. Thank you so much for joining us and listening today. We are excited to be interviewing another gem here in the Twin Cities who is a specialized provider that we love to refer to. We love to educate and bring community together to get the support and the resources that you need and deserve. And so I am so excited to introduce to you all Autumn Enloe, and she is from Autumn Enloe Nutrition, and she is going to talk to us today all about nutrition, blood sugars, different chronic fatigue, digestive issues, hormone imbalances, all of the things that I think us moms can relate to, especially through this huge transition into motherhood. Our body, our digestive system, we experience so many changes. And what I love about her business is, yes, she helps women through pregnancy, postpartum. But as a mom who has two 7-year-olds and a 10-year-old, it's really nice to know that there's resources out there outside of that initial postpartum time frame to really learn our new bodies, what they need, and get that specialized care. So I'm going to do a little intro, and then I'm going to really let Autumn take it away. I feel like I'm so excited to learn from her today, and I think all of you are going to be able to take some really great tidbits. And of course, we will share all of her contact information so that you too can get in touch with Autumn. Autumn is a registered dietitian and author. Congratulations. Who holds a master's degree in food and nutritional sciences. She is the owner, like I said, of Autumn Enloe Nutrition, where she focuses on helping moms restore their hormone health through simple and sustainable lifestyle changes. Autumn's been in the health and wellness world for over 15 years, and she is passionate about helping women get to the root cause of their health issues through specialized testing and personalized nutrition support. After struggling with her own health issues, ranging from chronic fatigue, digestive issues, multiple hormone imbalances, blood sugar issues, and burnout, I think we all can relate there. She is on a mission to help women incorporate health into their everyday lives in a sustainable way. Amen. Autumn offers different levels of virtual nutrition support and recently wrote a book, The Blood Sugar Balancing Handbook, which will be released December 24th, 2024. Amazing. Not only I think Autumn can provide so much information in terms of her education, but I love that you are able to relate to so many moms, and you've personally gone through some of these health issues that I think women really like to know, not only from an educational purpose, but also from like, I've been there. I know what you're feeling, and there is a better way. So welcome to the Mom to Mom podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so exactly what you said, like a lot of the issues that I help my clients with, I have gone through myself, so I can relate to them and I know exactly, it sucks to go through all of that. And so I am really passionate about helping people overcome that and really look at motherhood as in a way that they can thrive. They don't have to feel exhausted all the time. I get like sleep deprivation is a real thing, and motherhood can be exhausting, but I'm really passionate about helping moms really support their bodies and their health through, all the chaos that motherhood can bring sometimes.
And I think what's so special too, and what I want all of our listeners to know and to really kind of hone in on is this individual care. I think, and coaching. I think a lot of times, like we all know, right? The healthier we eat, the better we will feel. There's certain nutrition that will be helpful in energy support, digestive health. But like, how do I relate that to my own individual body needs, my digestive health? That's going to look different. And we talk about that a lot, obviously, as doulas, in terms of not comparing our body, our pregnancy symptoms, our birth experiences, because no two bodies are alike. So let's kind of dive in at first to talk about how you support women individually and really kind of not just giving this generalized support, but more individualized, specific to their needs, their body type, their hormones, and such, kind of through their journey in motherhood.
Yeah. So individualized care is really important because everyone has different needs and are just in different seasons of life, right? So I have some moms that are pregnant or have little ones, and other ones that their kids are, 20 plus. So everyone's, lifestyle is definitely different. And so when I work with clients, I'm looking at where they're at now. And so I'm not a dietitian that just like, gives them a food list of all the foods that they should be eating. It's more of like, what do you actually like to eat? What is going to work with your schedule? And, talk about their schedule, because that does play a huge role in our eating habits. So, if they're working 12-hour shifts or if they're staying at home, like it's just a different lifestyle. So, really looking at where they're at now, and then how can we add more nourishment to the foods that they already like. So if they're having, a smoothie in the morning, how can we add maybe more protein to that or add some vegetables to it? So taking what they like to have already, and then just really looking at how can we add more nourishment to that. So it's foods that they already like, but then it's also they're fueling their body better at the same time.
Yeah. And I'm sure too, for a lot of women who maybe have sensitivities or allergies, sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard, I think, because they have this mindset of like, I can't eat that. And so not really
Mhm.
understanding certain replacements that can provide the
Mhm.
same nutrition. And so really being able to not only enjoy what you're eating, but getting all of your needs and knowing what that is just through the work that they do with you. What I
Yeah.
found really intriguing when we first met and chatted was all about the certain tests that you run to gather this information to
Mhm.
put together this individual plan. So, can you talk a little bit about what those tests are and the information that they provide?
Yeah, so I love to do testing because it tells us really what's going on inside. So, of course, I mean, not everyone has to do testing, but it is a great tool to use if you're able to do that. So, the first one that I'll talk about is a hair tissue mineral analysis test. So, this is a test that I offer for all my one on one coaching clients. It's part of the program. And the clients take it in the beginning of the program, and then we can reassess later, a couple months after that. What that does, though, it shows us where our mineral status is at and how that impacts things like our hormones. So, especially things like our adrenals, our blood sugar, our thyroid. And then it also can tell us your metabolic types. So, if you are a fast burner or slow burner, and being a fast burner that's not necessarily a good thing. It doesn't mean that, you have this fast metabolism and you're burning all this fat really quickly. It actually means that you're burning through your nutrients really quickly, so you're in a more burnt out state. And when I actually took the
Um,
test for the first time on myself, I found out that I was in a burnt out state. So it shows us your mineral status and just how your body is adjusting to stress. So stress is a topic I talk about with everybody, and I know it's not a super fun topic because we're all stressed and we can't just magically disappear our stress. So it's important though to really look at how can we support our body with the stress, and also just know how is our body handling stress. Especially in motherhood, there's a lot of stressors that we go through. So, and everyone's body is different in how they handle stress. So, it's taking a look at how stress is impacting those minerals, and then as a result then we can really focus on adjusting some of that mineral balance and really supporting specific areas of your health, whether that's your blood sugar or your adrenals or your thyroid. So that is one of my favorite tests, and it's a hair test. So you do it right at home. So you don't have to go to the doctor and get blood drawn, which is a big bonus for a lot of
yeah.
people. Another test is I do a Dutch test. So the Dutch test is a really comprehensive hormone test. So it looks at your hormone pattern for 24 hours. So things like cortisol, for example, if you go to a traditional doctor, they might do, a cortisol at that point in time or like a morning cortisol, but that's just showing your cortisol for that given time.
Right.
Cortisol has a pattern throughout the day. So typically it's highest in the morning and then kind of tapers off during the day to get us ready for bed. So if our pattern is off, like just say in the afternoon, we have high cortisol levels, or even like with me, after going through burnout, my cortisol was actually really low. So over time, that can happen when your cortisol is high for an elevated amount of time. And then it, basically gets tired, and then
Yeah.
your adrenals can't produce enough cortisol. So that is a really helpful tool to see your overall cortisol pattern for that 24-hour period. And then, of course, it also shows things like your estrogen, progesterone, detox pathways, things like that. So that's a very comprehensive test that gives us a really great overview of hormone health in general. And then another one I do is a food sensitivity test. So I am a certified leap therapist, which means I did additional training to help clients with food sensitivities. So I use something called the mediator release test. And so what this does, it shows us how our white blood cells are affected by by different food and food chemicals. So it looks at about 174 different food and food chemicals. And I like this test because it can give us a really good idea of, is this a red food, which is a more reactive food, or is this
Okay.
more of like a yellow food? Some clients like to follow like a strict protocol with it. Generally, I use it more as like, okay, if you know that broccoli, for example, is a moderately reactive food for you, then maybe we shouldn't be having broccoli like in our eggs and at lunch and
Right.
at dinner. So just having that knowledge of like, this is causing a reaction for you. Of course, if somebody's having a lot of digestive issues, I would, really focus more on like, okay, let's just kind of settle the inflammation down and focus on the green foods, the non-reactive foods.
Okay.
But that is also a great test that just gives us a good overview of how different foods affect us, because even if something's like healthy, we might still
That
have a
doesn't mean
reaction
that
to
it's
it.
good for us. So how do you
Right.
how does that test work? How do you take that test?
Yeah, so that's a blood test. So a test kit is sent to the client, and then they get their blood drawn, and then it gets sent to the company and it gets analyzed, and then I come back and look at the results.
So they kind of do the mixing of the different food types to see reactions there.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. And then what about the Dutch test? Is that at home or is that blood work as well? Because it's more
yes. So
comprehensive.
yeah, so that is at home. So that's a urine and a saliva test.
Oh, great. So
So
that's
yeah, again, something you can do right at home.
all right, you guys. We're just going to take a brief break so that I can tell you all about one of How to Mom's favorite go to brands and products. Earth Mama Organics formulates and creates organic and natural herbal pregnancy, postpartum, breastfeeding, and baby care products. We believe that they are one of the best and the safest personal care products on the market for both you and for baby. You can follow the link in our bio, or you can go to howtomom.com/links. Follow the Earth Mama Organics link and enter How to Mom for your promotional code to receive 15% off. All right, now back to today's show. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, what I've learned over the years with nutrition, which I'm always learning and I have so much more to learn, but what can be so tricky, I feel like, for moms is because of that busyness and because of our eating patterns, we tend to then feel more fatigued, right? Because we're not
Mhm.
getting the nutrition. And so it feels like we potentially would be adding something to our plate to figure this out. But the beautiful thing is, we actually will gain more energy. We will feel better. And so
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like it's a stressor. But then when we really take a step back and say, like, if we invest in our health, what we get out of that is such a huge benefit that what we're stressing about right now with not feeling well, feeling tired, not having enough time really all of that could change if we spent that
Mhm,
time to invest. And so I
mhm,
think our society is doing a better job at like flipping that script. But it's still kind of, I'm sure, a little bit of a wall that a lot of us moms face. And so I
mhm,
just wanted to add that tidbit. And I'm sure within your work that you do with moms and with families, like that has to be one of the best feelings when a mom comes to you just feeling so run down, feeling so burnt out, feeling like there's no answers and like there's no hope. And then to go through your coaching and to go through the process, and I'm sure it's a journey like anything worth fighting for, but for them to be able to come back and give you feedback of like, wow, I just have this natural energy. I don't wake up feeling tired. I wake up feeling ready for the day. Like that has to
mhm.
be the best feedback that you can get.
Yes, it is. And when I became a mom, it was a huge reality check, right? I think like everyone's pretty naive when they first
Yes.
become a mom. And I'm like,
It's
what?
hard. If you don't know,
I
you
can't go
don't know.
right. Yeah. And even just like going to Target was like a huge ordeal, right? So
Yes.
I really struggled with just prioritizing health after I became a mom. And that's really why I love to focus on helping moms, is because I get how hard it can be. But then I also get like the payoff. Um, and a huge passion of mine is helping moms become a healthier version of themselves and setting that example for their children. So I used to be a pediatric dietitian, so working with peds and just having children myself, it's really, a lot of my clients come to me and they're saying, as a child they saw their mom dieting and restriction and eating different meals from the rest of the family. And I'm really passionate about helping moms take care of themselves so that they're setting that example for their children, because it does have such a ripple effect. I hear that all the time from clients, like even like the spouses, they're like, oh, my spouse is like losing 20 pounds. And, I'm not even like working with the spouse. And so it's just like this ripple effect of like, when they see their moms, prioritizing eating and not eating different meals from them and packing snacks for themselves as well as them, and exercising and taking that time for self-care, that then becomes their norm of like what they think
Absolutely.
health is, right? So it's like as they get older, that's going to be their norm too, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, a huge advantage that you're able to provide to your clients is that because you are a busy mom, you're able to not only help them implement these changes, but like in a realistic way, right?
Hmm.
So rather than feeling like you're investing in taking time to learn, but then you're like, well, these aren't even realistic changes. And then it
Hmm.
goes to the wayside. Whereas you're really able to say, let's talk about your day, let's talk about your schedule, where within that time frame can we make these changes that don't feel like an added stress or
Hmm.
something that's not sustainable. And so I think that's a huge perk with not only what it is that you provide, but just because of your own personal experience and the season of life that you are in as well. So can we talk a little bit about the changes that you notice in clients from, and maybe you don't work with all of them necessarily before having children and then after, but I'm sure just in your years of experience, what are some of the changes that you see in women within their body, within their hormone levels from prior to having children to after? Because I know we all can physically see the changes, we don't necessarily always know what's happening in our body. We know that our body is different, but can you kind of talk
Hmm.
about how we as moms can really kind of get a grasp and understand that different doesn't mean bad? It just means
Hmm.
that we are now different and forever changed. And so we deserve to take the time and understand our body in this new stage and really be able to foster that and care for it instead of wishing or thinking, well, this is what I did before I had kids. Well, we are no longer those people. So can you kind of
Yes,
talk about
yes.
the differences you see in women?
Yeah, I love that you point that out because it is really easy to compare, especially our bodies to, pre-kids and maybe in our 20s and like, well, I could do this and I could just eat whatever I want and now I can't. And our body is completely different. Like we literally had a child. That's a huge deal. And So the biggest thing that I see is just really, I mean, cortisol, obviously the stress hormone is a
Huge.
big one, and just not really being able to do all the things that they could previously, right? So like workouts and, meal planning and all of that stuff.
Right.
And when I work with moms, it's really about what season of life that you're in. And this like has been really helpful for me to think about too, is, there's different seasons in parenthood, right? Like when our kids, start to become like preschoolers and
Yep.
kindergartners, and like it's a little bit easier, like they can do stuff on their own versus like in the baby phase, right? Like there's
Right.
different phases. And so I think it's important to really consider that phase of life that you're in and really give yourself grace. Like we don't have to do everything. Like if you are sleep deprived and you're not getting up at 5 a.m. to do your workout, that's okay.
Absolutely.
I think it's just easy to be like, well, I was doing this and, I should be able to do this, but we need to really just think about what season of life that we're in and what can we do. When I work with clients, I encourage them to set 1 to 3 action items at a time. So they always have something that they're focusing on, but not, trying to change 25 things at once. And so
Right.
it's like, what is going to be easiest for you to, but also still effective to get you closer to your health goals, but that isn't going to cause a lot more stress on the body. So, and I'm really big on habit stacking. So it's like, what is something that you can implement into something that you're already doing? So if it's like on your drive to work, or I had a client the other day, we were talking about making her grocery list while she's waiting for her son to do his baseball tournament,
Yes.
like just trying to think of like, what are some pockets of time in my day that I can add in these things without just having, 20 more things on my to-do list.
Absolutely.
So I would just say stress is the biggest one, the biggest hormonal change. Also, I hear from women, with like periods too. I'm really passionate about helping women reduce PMS and just have, pain-free periods. I myself struggled with painful periods for probably 10 plus years. So after motherhood, after, you get your cycle back, there can be a lot of changes to that.
Yes.
And then just all the hormonal changes, right? Like I work with women aging from like 30 to in their 50s, 60s, going through menopause.
Right.
So just know again, like what season of life are you in and what are 1 to 3 action items that we can focus on? And it's okay if you're not doing your workout 5 days a week. Like what can you do with this period of time that you're in?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned periods because I'm embarrassed to admit, I mean, I'm turning 39 tomorrow, and I am
Ooh.
just now really grasping and understanding cycles and cycle
Mhm.
phases. And, I love that I feel like our society is starting to lean in a little bit more to prioritizing and thinking about rest and sleep as part of your
Mhm.
exercise routine, which is like
Mhm.
incredible. That is not at all the feedback or what I took, growing up or in my 20s and even in my early 30s.
Yeah.
Like, nope, you got to go, you got to go. It's like
Yeah.
once but then I'd be like, I'm like so tired. Like, I feel like I can't even get out of bed. Well, it's okay to listen to that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
rest days are just as important. And so, um,
Exactly.
I love that you specialize in periods as well, especially with working with women, because as I'm learning, there are certain foods, there are certain activity levels that really align with where you are at in your cycle. And it can work to your advantage if we really lean into that. And so
Mhm.
I just think that makes the work that you do a lot more comprehensive, right? Because that's something that we can't have a part of the equation. It's so big of, a part of a woman's life, her
Mhm.
everyday phase of her cycle. And that is directly correlated to digestive health and nutrition. And so that's incredible. So if you want to let people know a little bit more when you talk about the coaching that you do, what does that look like in terms of a time commitment, in terms of investment? And then I believe you had mentioned this to me when we talked last time, but if you want to let our listeners know, if they are just kind of shopping around and they're wanting to find the best fit for them, do you offer any free consults or a Q&A in addition to obviously the great information you're providing today? What does it look like to start to work with Autumn?
Yes, thank you. I love that question. So I do have a 4 or 6 month partnership, and I call it a partnership because it is like a two-way street, right? I can give a client all these resources and support, but they also have to meet me halfway. And so it is a partnership. I'm not somebody that's just going to like tell you all these things to do and hope you do it. Like I want this to be an interactive process. So I really look for clients who are willing to do some work. And it's not a huge time commitment. I ask for about like an hour a week that you can schedule in. I do have different resources available for clients, but I'm always like, you can listen to it on your drive to work or while you're in the pickup line. Like you can incorporate it into your everyday life, so it's not necessarily like you have to have this huge chunk of time during your day to really invest in it.
Right.
So I do offer a free connection call, so if somebody's interested in just feeling me out or the program, because everyone, I'm not for everybody. And it's really important to look at what's like the best approach that you're looking for specifically when it comes to a dietitian. So I have a coaching application, and then we schedule a free connection call. And with the 4 or 6 month program, it really so we're really setting the foundation with nutrition first. So being a dietitian, of course, nutrition is the big part of it. But my approach is more holistic. So I'm looking at things like their stress, their sleep habits, their digestion, their exercise, and then also any lab work. So, like the hair tissue mineral analysis test that I mentioned, if they have any lab work like from their doctor, I'm happy to look at that. And then we can really get an overview of like, okay, what are the main things to really focus on right now? And when I start with clients, so every client that I work with, when it comes to their nutrition, I really prioritize blood sugar balance. So this is a huge reason why I even wrote the book, because
Yeah.
it is something that I talk about with every client, no matter what their health goal is. So whether it's weight loss, or they have hypothyroidism or PCOS or painful periods or going through menopause, we really have to set that foundation for balancing our blood sugar. So I'm walking you through how to do that, and based on what they're currently eating, how can we make your meals more balanced. And then after they really get that foundation down, then it's digging deeper into the other areas of health, like I mentioned. So stress or sleep or exercise. So really finding what's the best approach for you, based on, again, the season of life that they're in.
Hey guys, it's Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. I'm just interrupting today's episode to make sure you are well aware of all that How to Mom offers. We, of course, are a community and a support group for all moms at all stages of life, but we also offer a large variety of services that I wanted to make sure you are well aware of. We offer birth doula services, both in person or online support. We have birth support groups with different birth packages to choose from. We also provide placenta encapsulation services, lactation services from our lactation counselors. We also offer postpartum services, birth planning assistance, belly casting. We have a registered dietitian nutritionist. We also offer a variety of photography services from birth, newborn, and family packages. We truly have it all here at How to Mom. So please don't hesitate to reach out today to have a free consult and help us find the best way to support you in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Now back to today's episode. Yeah, amazing. And so tell us a little bit more about your book. I know you have just briefly mentioned, because that is such a important part of the puzzle. That's why. But tell us a little bit more about your why behind that book and how people can get their hands on that.
Yes. So blood sugar is a topic that is often talked about just with people who have been diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes. It's not a traditional, nutrition topic that we talk
Right.
about in regard to preventative health. So I'm really passionate about helping clients, prevent even getting into that, prediabetes or diabetes categories.
Right.
And again, it's the foundation that I work on with every single client, because it does play a role in things like your energy, your digestion, your hormone health, your stress. And so when we're looking at blood sugar balance, it's really, how can we prioritize our meals so that they include all the macronutrients? So your protein, your nourishing fats, your fibrous carbohydrates, and then also things like meal spacing also plays a role in it.
Okay.
So when we're really focusing on blood sugar balance initially, that is really the starting foundation for helping improve areas like energy and digestion and cravings and
Yes.
periods and just hormone health in general. So my big why behind it was, again, just like knowing that that is such a foundational piece that really isn't talked about a lot in regard to preventative health. And I myself have had blood sugar issues. I was like that girl that was always hangry and, always had to have a snack with all the time. And also with my second pregnancy, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And
Okay.
so that's when I really also dove into, carbohydrates and how they're impacting blood sugar and just meal spacing and things like that. So, of course, some hormones and stuff like that play a role in
Right.
gestational diabetes, but really, like that really helped me to hone in on the topic even more. So,
Yeah.
I've had some history with blood sugar issues, but then also just the combination of seeing the impact that blood sugar balance can have with my clients.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting that it's not talked about a lot when it plays such a
Yeah.
role in our preventative health. And since you mentioned gestational diabetes, I think a lot of our listeners would be interested to know, do you work with women during that pregnancy, and if maybe they have questions about the test that most doctors recommend, what if
Mhm.
they are diagnosed with gestational diabetes? Kind of how are you able to support women through that, or even being, like you said, preventative, so that maybe potentially they aren't receiving that diagnosis? And I know there's a lot of talk too about other options aside from, the typical drink that we get when we go to our provider for that test, and kind of any tidbits that you have to share with our listeners about that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I don't specialize in pregnancy nutrition. I do have some clients that are pregnant, so I can work with pregnancy, but usually I attract more of the clients that are postpartum and kind of like
Yes.
out of the thick of it all. But um, when it comes to, like, if somebody was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, again, it'd be really looking at, okay, I mean, it also depends on what they can tolerate too, right? Because like
Right.
during pregnancy, we kind of go through these periods of maybe like everything, with meat is disgusting, or, like there's just certain things that
Adverse
seem more appealing.
reactions. Yeah.
So really looking at what are they able to take down, and how can we really try to get more protein in, especially, and then
Yes.
also the types of carbs that they're having. So a big thing that I talk about is always pairing a carb with a buddy. So, instead of having like a banana by itself, have it with some maybe natural peanut butter or some almonds or a cheese stick or something to help prevent some of those like big spikes in blood sugar.
Right.
Um, as in regard to the alternatives, so when I personally did, when I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, I did the traditional test.
Okay.
Looking back now, if I were to do it again, I would ask for an alternative.
Yeah.
Things like getting, eating a balanced meal and then having your blood sugar checked after that is an alternative. Again, it depends on your doctor and
Yeah.
all of that, but um I mean, there is alternatives.
Yeah.
So know that you don't always have to go the traditional route. And but
And I
yeah.
think too, like how we educate as birth doulas is just knowing that there's options, and,
Mhm.
being able to formulate questions to ask your provider. That doesn't mean that you're going against care, and that doesn't mean that you're not open to the recommendations and the suggestions. But it is just like with anything in pregnancy and birth, understanding what is happening to my body. What are you looking for? Why do we test for this? What are the alternatives? And just really understanding and being the advocate for your own individual care, I think is so important. And we're seeing some changes, and I hope we continue, of that questions aren't bad, right? Providers should be
Mhm.
able to answer your questions and really help you make an informed decision. And so yeah, it's just such an interesting topic. Now, will you let I know that you specialize in working with women, and especially kind of after that postpartum care. If a mom has maybe some children that might have some sensitivities or digestive health, would you also work with kids as well, or do you kind of stay in the lane of working just with women?
I do take children occasionally.
Okay.
So especially with things like food sensitivity testing, we
Mhm.
can do that with children. I would say if they're under 12, I wouldn't recommend it,
Okay.
but there's certainly some, things that we can do definitely to help improve things like blood sugar for children as well.
Amazing. Okay, well, I told Autumn before we jumped on today for this interview, one of my most favorite questions that I love to ask, and not only just as a nutritionist, but also just as a busy mom, because those are our listeners. If there is one thing that you can leave our listeners with today, whether it has to do with nutrition or just being a busy mom, what is one thing that you wish you would have known or something that you have learned through your motherhood journey that you would love to share with our listeners today? What would that be?
Yes. So there's so many things.
I know it's hard to like narrow it down. That could be a whole interview.
Right. It could. So one Well, I was going to say about the seasons of life, which we already talked about. I think that's a really big thing. And really, what helped me is to be like, okay, yes, I'm just in a season of life and I'm in the thick of it. And,
Yeah.
it's if I can't get to the yoga class all the time, if I can't, do this all the time, that's okay. Like, take what I can do and be
Yeah.
okay with that. Another thing I would say is just to get back to the basics of nutrition. I hear all the time that people, you go on Instagram, you go on Google, like one day you should be keto, the next day you should be vegan. And what's most important is finding what works for you. So just
Yes.
because, your neighbor is doing keto doesn't mean that that's the right option for you. So everyone is so different. And it's really important to figure out what feels good to you, like what gives you energy, what's going to be sustainable for you. If you don't feel good intermittent fasting, don't do it. So
Right.
we just need to get back to the basics of like, okay, and that's where the blood sugar balance really comes in. It's like, okay, am I eating all of my macronutrients? Am I eating my carbs, my protein, my fat? Am I eating 3 meals a day? And then just kind of fine tuning it based on your goals and what works for you. But I think it's easy to get caught up in all the noise
Mhm.
and kind of forget like what actually feels good for us. So really get back to the basics of balanced meals and then fine tuning it from there.
I love that. And obviously the work that we do as professionals, it's very different. However, I feel like it's much of the same. And I think there's so much wisdom behind that. And we tell clients that all the time. We do not want you comparing your pregnancy, your body, your baby, your birth, and your postpartum time to your neighbor, to your sister, to your friend. We are all individuals. And that's a beautiful thing. And what aligns with you and your family values and what feels good in your body and gives you energy and makes you feel healthy, it is okay if that is different, and you deserve the individual care, especially for us as women, because we are constantly changing, not only in our season of life, but also our body makeup and our stress levels. And that directly correlates with the season of motherhood that we're in. So, Autumn, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
so much
you.
wisdom today. Please, everyone who's listening, if you have further questions, you can always post them. You can reach out to Autumn on her website or on Instagram. We will have all of her contact information below in the show notes. But thank you for listening today. And Autumn, thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone. All right, you guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If so, please subscribe to our podcast, comment, share, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will see you next time.